Welcome to the Women's Gut Health Podcast, where functional nutrition meets ancient wisdom to bring you grounded insights and practical tools for your wellness journey. Join Lara, wellness wizard and licensed Eastern medicine practitioner, and Molly, dietitian and gut health expert, as they unpack trends, tackle bloating, balance hormones, and help you thrive in modern womanhood without completely losing your frickin' mind. Let's do it.
Today we're talking about nicotine, and nicotine is, of course, not for use in people under 18 years of age. Also, we are talking about a lot of different things that are not necessarily backed by evidence. And that's what we do on this podcast. We like to get different opinions and challenge different theories, and we want you to have this cool information, but we also don't want you to do anything without first making sure it's appropriate with your doctor for your body. Enjoy the podcast.
Well, hi there.
Hello, my dear. How is it going? What is new? What's a happening?
It's going amazing. How about you?
It's going good. It's going good. I had a great weekend with the ladies up at the Society Hotel in Hood River. We did a soak and just really like some nice downtime and good conversation. So I was exhausted yesterday, but I have feeling very rejuvenated today.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you. How about you?
Doing great. It's beautiful here. I can't believe this weather, so I'll take it.
Yeah, it's actually snowing all over me. Not here in Portland, but all around us. Not all over me. Sorry. I'm not receiving lots of snow on my physical body, but there is a lot of snow in all the towns around me. So I'm feeling it might come soon, which would be cool.
Amazing.
My youngest son would be over the moon for snow to come down here. He didn't have to drive up to the mountains to get to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What was the best thing that you ate this week?
Oh my gosh, this was a hard one for me because we were in the RV last week on like a trip all the way to California. We did a lot of like, basic staples we eat most of the time, cooking in the RV sort of thing. But then up in Hood River this weekend, we went to like a vinegar and oil like tasting room, which was awesome. They have these big jugs with like a little spigot, and you just take your little sample cup underneath and you just taste all these amazing flavors of olive oil or vinegar or whatever. So I came home last night and I used the vinegar that I bought, which is a white balsamic vinegar, and it is flavored with suyo and cucumber.
Ooh.
It is so good. It was like orgasmic when we were drinking it. We were like, what is this amazingness? So I brought it home last night and I just mixed it up with some regular olive oil and a little bit of sesame oil and some sesame seeds and just put it on greens. And it was like a party in my mouth. It was so exciting.
Oh, I love that.
So simple, but so good. It was really nice to try out the balsamic vinegars, especially I don't know, it was just really nice having the flavors. I kind of forgot how versatile and like wonderful those can make just such simple foods. It was really good.
Oh, for sure. White balsamic's my favorite because it doesn't like make it look weird almost,
Right.
like the darker. First of all, it has I think a better flavor, but also sometimes the darker makes the salad look weird.
It does. You're right.
The
Like
darker
the greens
color.
kind of get a little muted. They look almost like a little rotten.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about you? What'd you eat?
Oh my gosh, so many things. But I honestly, I've been really obsessed with like messing around with dried beans. So there are a lot of recipes out there for something called brothy beans. I don't know if you've heard of this or seen it.
I don't know.
But it's basically like you take dried beans and soak them and then cook them.
Sure.
And then add them to like a garlic, onion, kind of bone broth or stock situation.
Okay.
Add some chopped up greens. I add like a bunch of fresh herbs, add a bunch of garlic, and then do it with like some sourdough toast.
Oh my gosh, that
So
sounds
good.
so simple. That's like a perfect
Yeah.
spleen nourishing meal.
Oh,
It really is because it's
really?
so easy to digest, but really high in nutrients, especially those deeper nutrients. Because, like in a bone broth, you're getting the collagen, you're getting the calcium, you're getting the magnesium. Oh my gosh, you're getting so many amazing things. What is the name? I mean, to me, it just sounds like you're cooking broth and adding simple things to it. But what's the fancy name we're calling it these days?
Brothy beans.
Brothy beans.
Yes, and if you search like on any social media, you'll see all of these like beautiful recipes.
Oh, I'm
But I
sure.
have this cookbook that I am obsessed with by the Plant-Based RD, and so it's vegan stuff,
Sure.
which I'm not a vegan, but there's a bunch of you can modify anything, so
Yeah.
really cool.
Ooh, I love that. So what kind of beans did you use?
I use Great Northern beans, which are kind of the medium, small to medium sized. Like the smallest white beans would be navy, and then medium is more like Great Northern, and then the larger ones are butter beans.
Yeah.
But they all kind of taste the same, you know.
Oh, yeah, I like a Great Northern bean. I like a Great Northern and then a chickpea. Those are kind of the two
Oh,
that I like. The others don't work so well in my system, unfortunately. So we don't eat a lot of
hmm.
beans here in our house, which is a bummer. But my boys get a lot at the vegan house of their dads, so they're getting beans.
We got to set you up with some enzymes.
I guess so. I guess so. Well, what's interesting is when I've never really craved a lot of beans in my life, and when I took the and so I hadn't even touched a black bean in years. And on my immunoglobulin panel, they were off the charts, which was so interesting because I hadn't touched them in forever. Same as almonds and eggs, which I was eating every day. So my, innate immunity was very engaged there, saying, "No, thank you. I don't like
Yeah.
this. I'm making a lot of antibodies to this." Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I would love the way I do enjoy the chickpeas and the white beans. Those are like the ones I'm like, okay, this feels nourishing. This doesn't feel challenging for my digestion when it's going in, which is nice.
Perfect. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I gotta try this.
Okay, and then you tell me about your internet thing, and my internet thing will lead into our guest.
Okay, I love it. What I found, so mine kind of was similar to our guest today too. I came across mine is just like an informative chart. I did send it to you, but let me look it up here real quick and get it right in front of my face. It is a chart of all the neurotransmitters, and it kind of makes them palpable. So, for example, if you think about ways in which you can engage your brain every day and making sure that you're getting a little dopamine, getting a little serotonin, getting a little oxytocin, like what does that actually even mean? Like what is it that's associated with them? What kind of behaviors bring it on and how are you going to feel afterwards? So I really love
Mm-hmm.
this one. So it talks about getting your daily dose, DOSE. We've got dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And I was like, this is wonderful. This makes it so
That's
simple.
cool.
It's by it's called Dorset MHST. They're a mental health support team in schools, which is, I started following them after this. I thought it was so good. So dopamine, again, the reward chemical, right? Like we love it. We're going to talk about that a lot with nicotine, I would imagine. What we want there is to create something, achieve a goal, complete a task, or have self-care activities. That'll bring on that sensation of, dopamine, make you kind of want some more of it, keep the goal train going.
Mm-hmm.
Oxytocin is the love hormone. We like to
Ooh.
socialize. We want to hug a family member or you snuggle with your new loving bolsterous kitty, or helping other people. That really like
Mm-hmm.
brings that joy and kind of connective love sensation. Serotonin. This is a mood stabilizer. We get out in the sunlight. We try mindfulness. We be with nature. We try meditation. Things that I think are really like parasympathetic inducing, that we kind of look at things in that bubble.
Mm.
And then endorphins, I mean, I think we love this one, the painkiller. My pain was terrible until I went for a run and then it got better. Oh, well, there's your endorphins.
Right.
I also wanted to have sex afterwards. My appetite was better, all of it. The downstream effect of endorphins is awesome. But, listening to music, watching a movie, having a laugh with friends, all of those things can bring on endorphins. And what I think is fun is to kind of look at these examples, maybe make this list a little longer and just kind of aim to pick one that you do each day to make sure you're engaging all the different parts of your brain, and feeling awesome.
Mm. Oh, how cool is that?
I loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is the best ever. I love this GIF. Bring it.
Bring it.
What about you?
I what about me? So a friend of mine that actually gave me my dog long ago. I know,
Oh, how long can
I
I
know.
digress for just a second? How long have you had your dog?
Yes, since 2014.
2014. And did you get her as a new pup, or was
I
she?
got her as a new pup. Yes, her name was Lily, and
Uh-huh.
it still is today.
Oh, and so she's 10.
Yeah, she's 12.
Okay. Go Lily. All right.
I
Okay,
know.
sorry. I
I
just
know.
now I know. Now that I know all the four-legged friends in your home, and we're good to go.
So the post was my friend Misha, who's our guest today,
Right.
and she was talking on TikTok. Her TikTok is amazing, and we'll link it in the show notes about like how she had long COVID and there were all kinds of symptoms that she was having, and no one could figure it out. And she's like very health conscious. She's doing all of these things. You know, we talk about it all the time. And she tried nicotine patches, and seemingly they worked.
Oh,
So I know. So we have Misha Griffis here, and she is going to tell us all about her journey with long COVID. We're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about nicotine. Misha is so well versed in just the whole scientific field, of course, with a background in industrial hygiene. And we are thrilled to have you today. Hey, how are you, Misha?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm actually pretty tired today, but I'm here. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy. Okay. So, first of all, I think what I'd love to know is tell us like kind of some of your background, and then like how did you know you had COVID? What were your symptoms at the time? And then how did you know that you had long COVID?
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, I've dealt with some sort of autoimmune like issues for a while after having my breast implants removed in what was it, 2021, I believe. And so I dealt with a lot of
congratulations.
immune. Oh, thank you. Yes, it was definitely the cause of a lot of issues I was having. Unfortunately, it did leave me with what may be lifelong, issues, but at least it's not as bad as it was with women. Now, I was dealing with some stuff that seemed like a flare up for a while. And then, like, one week I was kind of sick, so I thought I'm just fighting a bug. Next week I had other symptoms, what seemed like maybe a different virus. So I'm like, okay, back to back viruses, not surprising with kids. Third week, more symptoms, still feeling very off, very, very fatigued. Um, Starting to get frustrated at that point. And by week 4 of day after day after day, waking up at an energy level that isn't able to function on a very basic level, I was like, okay, I got to go to the doctor. We got to figure out what's wrong with it, with me. And I started looking into all different options. So I made sure the doctor tested for Lyme, EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, because that can reactivate for people and cause similar issues. Uh, and all, vitamin levels, hormone levels, things like that. And when everything came back normal, I asked the doctor, well, what do I do? If everything is supposedly fine, but I couldn't even work at that point. And she was like, I think you have long COVID. And I did not realize what long COVID consisted of. I thought it was kind of just people who had like a cough and some respiratory issues long term. Like I didn't think it wasn't real, but I did not know the severity of, what people are dealing with long COVID. So I immediately joined a bunch of support groups on Facebook that have quite a few members. Like I've been a member of support groups for like lupus and Lyme and EDV and things like that. The long COVID support groups have a lot of people in them in comparison. So there are a lot of people dealing with it. And I come to find out most people that deal with long COVID only get worse over time and are disabled. I can't tell you the number of stories I've read of people who were, triathletes and now are in a wheelchair because they don't have the strength to move every day. I've even seen stories about children. I read an excerpt the other day of a mom just frustrated because her 9-year-old is now, not able to go to school most days, can't function. She was like an athlete. I mean, it is so sad. Some of these stories. There was a 19-year-old that posted. He got it when he was 16, and now he's, can't go to college, can't finish school. He can't hardly get up and walk, during the day. Like it's bad. It's very bad. So yeah, that's where I landed, and then just starting to do a lot of research on what my options were. Because when I asked the doctor, she said, well, basically symptom management. She's like, we just don't know enough about it. But I was fortunate to have, it's a Kaiser doctor too, of all things, recognize it and that it's real, and referred me to a long COVID clinic. I actually just saw her the other day, and she asked me if I had heard back from them. And I said no, and that was 2.5 months ago.
Mm.
And she said, that doesn't surprise me. I think there's like a 6-month plus long waiting list for the long COVID clinic through Kaiser. So that's what they're dealing with. And most people don't even understand it's happening.
Right.
So if you went and tried, I'm curious. I know we're going to talk about the nicotine patches, but what were some of the things that you saw in these groups that people would like kind of default to for trying? You know what I mean? Like for people that are listening, absolutely, they're like, "Oh, I already tried this. I tried this. I tried this." You know, what did you see come up that was trending?
Absolutely. So, nicotine patches were something I saw. The other very common one that most people, if they've had any success with, has been this. It's low dose naltrexone.
Yeah.
So that's been one that's been really common that I've seen. Some people have gone on like extended, treatment cycles of, I forget the name of it, but it's basically an antiviral medication.
Oh, wow. That's
Cyclovir or something. So there's people who've done that and done like months, and that's helped. I'd say as far as like supplements go, the ones that I've seen that almost everyone with long COVID is on are a lot of the immune boosters. So like zinc, vitamin C, those kind of things, vitamin D. But then I always say this wrong. It's like catokinase or nattokinase. It's like a Japanese supplement or something. I'd have to look it up again, but I've seen that one commonly. A PQ or PPQ, I think it is, CoQ10 like combo. And then basically the NAD plus or precursors, so NMN, NR, or NAD plus.
Right.
A lot of people on there.
And for the listeners, those are just really heavy hitting antioxidants, like really heavy hitting antioxidants. Yeah. Which you think would be really helpful in that scenario.
Right. And I think there's kind of a couple different things that I hear. It's, long COVID leads to dysregulation of the autonomic system. So dysautonomia essentially is the diagnosis for a lot of people. So that can vary from people developing very commonly POTS. So when they stand up, they basically feel like they're going to pass out.
Yeah.
And then a lot of heart issues, balance issues, nerve issues, things like that. And so there's that. And then also people talking about a mitochondrial issue. So some of the mitochondrial support, NAC is another very common one that a lot of people take with long COVID.
I see a lot of adaptogens too. They take, because they're so safe and you can take them in high doses. Yes. And
some people have had a lot of success with lion's mane, but other people, like whether it be the product or just the person, haven't had a success. But some people have had really good success.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a kitchen sink person. I'm like, it doesn't really matter what worked. It took you a lot to get here. It's going to take you a lot to get out of it. Let's just try it all.
Yep, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. How amazing. So what made you want to try the nicotine stuff? Was that just on there a lot, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'd say I looked through tons of historical posts on the support groups of things that people said worked for them. And the most common thing that I saw, as well as the most effective thing, was the nicotine patches. And then people kept referencing a Facebook support group called the Nicotine Test. So I joined that group as well, which I think right now has like 18,000 members or something.
Wow.
And it's not just long COVID. So they also do like vaccine-injured or people with Lyme. It's basically anyone with chronic fatigue syndrome, because that seems to be the main thing that it's, addressing, those nicotine patches. And then being a science person, I looked at the study that was, they were basing that theory off of. And while the study itself was terrible, it had a 4-person sample size, that's laughable. But
when was the study?
I think it was 2022.
Oh, okay. So a couple years later. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was. It might have been a little bit earlier, but essentially, this researcher had noticed that people who smoke or vaped or use nicotine products had lower rates of COVID and less severe COVID, like across the board. And that's not obviously what you would think, that like smokers should be more at risk. Example one is my brother my whole family's gotten COVID multiple times, and my brother lives with a wife with lupus. And so she's gotten COVID multiple times. He's never had it, and he's a smoker. Never had it. No vaccine, nothing, just never got it. And so when they started talking about the actual kind of biochemistry behind it, and like the spike proteins basically attaching to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors,
Right.
and hiding there. And then, of course, I already knew that like nicotine was super affinitive for those receptors and would kick off basically anything that's there to replace it. The theory behind it made sense to me scientifically. So that was why I was like, between that and then researching negative effects of transdermal nicotine, skin absorption nicotine, I was like, I feel like there's not much of a risk to try these. There's not a lot of harm that can be done at that low of a dose for me personally, especially previously being a smoker. And I had nothing to lose at that point.
Yeah. So when you say low dose, what do you mean?
Like 7 milligrams of a patch, like a continuous delivery.
So you'd cut a patch and put it on and just use a small amount of it?
You can buy ones that are 7, and then there's 14, there's 21. Now the reservoir patches, you do not want to cut. That can be very dangerous because it could deliver it all in one go, because it's basically it's just caught in a reservoir. But the other patches are more uniform, so you can cut those. It says not to, but most people in the nicotine group cut theirs to achieve smaller doses. I started at 7. I did not have any bad side effects from that, but a lot of people are very sensitive.
Yeah.
And have to cut it into, like 16ths, like very low doses to start, and then titrate up.
So what did you notice that you felt like right away when you first started doing it?
I didn't notice anything on the first day. The second day, I got this like boost in the afternoon that was the most energy I'd had in, over a month at that point. I think third and fourth day I felt pretty bad, but I did get some vaccines that I was behind on, like all of them in one day. So I kind of knew that was going to happen.
Gosh, you poor thing. That's a lot.
Yeah. I was due for like tetanus, pneumonia, flu, that kind of stuff. So I did get those. So I felt a little bit like sick that day and the next day, but it was basically sort of a wave of stuff that made it really hard to tell whether it was working until about day 10. That was about the first time that I realized, like, from morning to night, I had more energy than I had. And like I said, I think at that point it was 8 weeks. And then from that day on, each day still had energy. And give it like a week or two after finishing the first 2 weeks of the nicotine patches. On certain days, I was having more energy than I had pre-COVID. Like I was feeling better than before. Now I was, like I said, on a bunch of different supplements that could have been helping with that energy. But either way, I felt like I had absolutely gotten back to my baseline after completing the protocol.
So cool.
Yeah. So were you taking 7 milligrams only up until day 10, or did you dig around with more or less or whatever?
We did play around a little bit. It was I think it might have been the third day that I was like, okay, I'm feeling good and I want this to go faster, harder.
Yeah, let's do this.
My personality. So I upped it to 14, and it was funny. I was fine all day. So I was like, oh, I'm good. And then at night, I remember I went to take a bite of my dinner, which I had made like blueberry oatmeal, and then immediately got nauseous, couldn't eat. I had a terrible headache. I was like, it would be the patches. It wouldn't be that delayed. And then I tried it the next day again, and I had the same thing happen. So I was like, okay, let me drop it back down. So it was about the 5th day, I think I dropped back to 7. And that went away. So I was like, okay, I think it's just a delayed reaction to the nicotine. So I stayed on 7 like the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. So what do you think is going on? Like, with your background of like understanding the chemistry and, kind of the up and downstream of acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter in our brain, like, are you seeing it kind of like, I imagine that it's kind of coming in and just like shaking you a little bit, and like everything's kind of like, okay, it's almost like acupuncture. When you feel like shit, you go and you lay down, you feel like you like rebooted your body. Do you feel like there was like kind of a reboot that happened for that pathway?
Yeah, definitely. So it was like, the theory is that spike proteins are attaching to these nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and then that once you use the nicotine comes in being more affinitive and kicks those spike proteins off, replaces it. The only other thing that would go to that receptor would be acetylcholine or nicotine. So once that happens, though, the spike protein is in the body now for the body's antibodies that it already has to fight it off, which is why people often get what they call a Herx reaction. So you kind of get sicker first before you get better.
Sure.
So when those spike proteins are released off those receptors, they're free flowing the body for the immune system to ramp up and fight off. And like I said, I did get, vaccinations during that time, so it was hard to tell if it was a Herx reaction or a reaction to the shots. But either way, I did get a little worse and feel kind of sick before getting better. And then as I got better, I did just feel like completely rebooted. I think the biggest thing that told me I was feeling better was the comparison between how I was feeling once I started feeling better and how I'd been feeling for those 8+ weeks, because it had gotten to the point where I was like, am I really tired, or am I just like depressed? Like, you start gaslighting yourself. At least this
I'm
has been my
sure. I
experience.
cannot even imagine. Like, I'm perimenopausal and go through phases of this, and I'm like, oh
Right.
my gosh, is this all in my brain? Like, I know it's my
Yeah.
hormones and so on, but when
Yeah.
it becomes long, it's a mind fuck. I don't care what
Yeah.
anybody says.
It really is. And I was like, when I started feeling better, I'm like, oh, now I know with 100% certainty.
Yeah.
That was very, very real. And what I'm experiencing now is night and day difference to what I was feeling.
That's crazy. That is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Now, are you feeling like, okay, so I did some research, and have you heard all of this about like the people saying that nicotine is kind of an anti-aging hack or a brain health hack? Have you been hearing any of this?
So what I will say I've heard, or at least seen when I was doing my own research, was that like transdermal nicotine and in lower doses had
Meaning
been
the
being
patch, right?
had been being used for things like some research around like dementia and like other brain issues. So I knew that there might be a beneficial component to it. And I've also vaguely heard things about people using like pouches or gum and then going and working out. I guess it has like a benefit there. But I didn't look too far into that. I just wanted to get an idea of if the doses I was going to be using were, dangerous for any reason, and also if they were addictive, which a lot of studies showed that transdermal nicotine is not addictive in the same way as other delivery methods of nicotine. So when I came off the patches, I saw no side effects at all.
I can see how that would be true because it's a slower absorption versus like the hit that gives you the buzz that kind of creates
Right.
all those happy neurotransmitters that we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a study that I found. So there's a memory improvement through nicotine dosing. And I believe this is being done at Vanderbilt University. And they are using nicotine to see if it can improve or alleviate memory loss in people with mild cognitive impairment or delay progression of Alzheimer's.
Okay.
So I thought that was interesting. And then I wanted to know if nicotine really was toxic. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
well, now my next question for you is, are you going to continue to use the patches just like, or did you stop?
So I came off them for like a week, and then I was going to be going to fly to get my kids, and I was really nervous about being exposed to anything. And since it worked, I was thinking in my head, okay, the theory might be right then, and there might be a reason why a lot of nicotine users weren't getting COVID, or if they weren't getting very sick. So I started using 3.5 milligrams a day for about 2 weeks. Like when I went to get my kids, a couple days before I went to get my kids and fly, and then for a couple weeks after, because we had another friend coming to visit too, who was going to be flying. I just knew I'd be exposed, so I kept using those. I actually just went off the 3.5 milligram, I think a week ago. So I think for now I'm not going to, but it's hard because the people on the support group, there's kind of a recommended protocol for the most part, but it's basically everybody experimenting what works for them. There are people who do it and continue to do it for a long time. There are people who do it and then do cycles, and then there are people who have done it and then stopped. I might do a cycle again. I'm not sure yet. I actually started feeling kind of unwell, not this Saturday, but the Saturday before, and I've had unusual fatigue all week. It's not as severe as it was before the patches, but I'm not sure what might be causing it. It's hard again because Molly knows I have like other issues that come up, with different flare-ups. So I probably will do another cycle at some point. since it's relatively benign, you know, it won't hurt me to at least try it and see if that helps
Is
another
a
time.
cycle like 10 days?
So,
So
like,
how
for
long?
me, I kind of averaged it off of what the protocol was or what most people were doing. Um, and it seemed like to me 2 weeks was a good amount of
Yeah.
time. So 2 to 3 weeks being on it and then coming off of it.
Yeah. And, kind of being in the hormone realm in my brain, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm sorry if this is a little personal, but are you a menstruating woman at this point?
Yes, I am. And I don't know for sure where I was at my cycle, but I could look it up because I
Yeah.
do have
Yeah. I
that
was
track.
wondering if maybe doing it during the ovulatory phase, as opposed, when you do have a lot more upstream things going on, as opposed to the bleeding phase when you're a little more
Yes.
depleted, if you would have
Yeah.
more of a benefit there. It also made me think that when you do that unlocking with your, 2 week, what are we calling it?
It's
Protocol,
like,
I guess.
yeah.
Cycle protocol thing. Yeah. That, hitting those supplements that you found that you seemed to notice an increase in the efficacy of the nicotine kind of at that same time. Do you see anybody kind of doing heavier protocols before and after they're doing the cycles or anything where they've seen success? To me, it seems
I
like you
haven't.
kind of add this cumulative effect to the benefit, or like add to that unlocking.
Right. Yeah. You know, I wondered if some of the supplements that I was taking might have been contributing to the success. But the thing is, I've looked at many, many, many posts by people of what has and hasn't worked for them. And the things that I'm on alone have not helped people anywhere near enough. People I think would say they're maybe like 20%, better on those supplements. So it's worth it for sure, because that 20% could make or break being able to get up and do laundry for the day,
Sure.
because that's actually a feat in itself when you're feeling that bad. Um,
It's a feat in
but
yourself when you're not feeling bad.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't necessarily think that those had a big effect on the result of the nicotine. I feel like they're kind of not necessarily related, but they might be. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Also, because you wonder, okay, so if there is potential here with this modality for long COVID, then what about the other stuff? Like, what about with POTS, which stands for polystatic or no, postural orthostatic
Hypotension.
tachycardia syndrome, which is
Yeah.
basically your blood pressure drops when you stand up. And it
Right.
also has a lot to do with digestion and your vagus nerve. I have some clients with POTS.
I was gonna say, so the other thing I forgot to mention when you were asking me the common things that I saw working, vagus nerve stimulation is a very common one too. That
Now, is that
people
humming, gargling, singing, cold therapy,
in
or is the
any of
device?
those or a tool. So I've seen the people have devices, and then
Yeah,
a
they're
lot of
like
people,
$300.
yeah. So a lot of different types of vagus nerve stimulation people have found to be useful and effective for long COVID, at least to some extent.
I'm dying to know why. You know what I mean? Like, why would the vagus nerve, like, how does COVID impair the vagus nerve?
Well, I mean, the thing that I'm thinking is like when you get the acetylcholine system involved in the
Mm-hmm.
autonomic nervous system, those all begin to be very related.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
some people,
Duh.
that's all like intertwined. It's just, it's like finding what it's actually doing, and then also the variation, because just like with autoimmune, everyone, even if they have the same autoimmune disease, kind of reacts a little differently.
Right.
And that's what I think what's happening with long COVID too, why you see such a high degree of varying symptoms. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, that's so interesting. So the vagus nerve is the nerve that connects your brain to your organs and all of your extremities, and it just goes all throughout your body and it sends those messages back and forth using neurotransmitters.
Right.
Just so that
Yeah.
everybody knows. Sometimes, we say stuff and
Yeah. No.
we're like, duh.
And it's people just so they know. They didn't take a very expensive grad level class that they had to fill with pass. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys mind? Do you want to hear a couple things that I learned about nicotine when I was doing this?
Yeah.
A little research to get ready.
Yeah, I'm curious if it'll be like the similar stuff that I read before I started.
Yes, and definitely chime in.
Okay, so basically, nicotine is an alkaloid derived from tobacco leaves, and we'll put the citations in the show notes as well. Cigarettes do not deliver high amounts of nicotine. So, a standard American cigarette has about a milligram of nicotine versus like a Zyn patch, or pouch. Those are much higher. Vapes as well, they're delivering a much higher concentration of nicotine than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So even, I think when we're looking at other, like how new vapes and these pouches are on the scene, and then of course the transdermal, but like you're saying, so you're doing 7 milligrams over 24 hours.
I do take it off at night because of, well, some people can get really bad nightmares. But
Yes, when I was quitting smoking, they gave me bad nightmares.
yeah, and other people just get really vivid dreams. Me, it's vivid dreams, and in a way, I actually kind of like it. I've had some really cool dreams on the nicotine patch, but I don't sleep deeply with them, so I take it off, an hour or two before bed. So 12 to 16 hours maybe wearing it, and then be off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So probably it's meant for a 24-hour delivery. So we could say that you're probably getting like, 5 point whatever
Right.
over. Okay. So, and then I wanted to know, like, where is there anything behind this is nicotine good for you stuff? So I found that Mind study. I also found a 1991 study that's talking about exactly what you're talking about, how nicotine stimulates the release of neurotransmitters. And basically, they're saying when you chronically take nicotine, it's either positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, weight loss, performance enhancement, protection against things like Parkinson's, Tourette's, Alzheimer's, or it can cause ulcerative colitis or sleep apnea. So I think it was really interesting to see that it's like, they're like, oh, well, but they said, let's keep checking on this because it's very interesting. And, back then they didn't have these other delivery methods. Now, these patches basically are these pouches. I'm sorry, I keep saying patches. For example, an extra strength nicotine pouch has 11 milligrams. And I think they're like 4 hours? They're supposed to last like 4 hours or something.
Yeah.
So imagine that compared to a cigarette. Let's say if you smoke 20 cigarettes a day, you smoke one every half hour or so. So maybe every 45 minutes. So that's only 1 milligram or 4 milligrams
Right.
over the course of an hour, maybe 5 versus 10 in these extra strength pouches. So now I just found one case study of a 21-year-old male who had an exam. So he went through 163.5 milligrams of nicotine because he consumed 15 of those pouches. And all of his symptoms went away in 12 hours, basically, because he metabolized it so quickly. But it can be really detrimental. He had obviously nausea,
Right.
hypertension, like really fast heart rate because it is a stimulant. And then, headache, confusion, tremors, and then it can cause like coma and respiratory failure. And it's very addictive. So, if you're doing like a ton of nicotine, just like with a ton of anything,
Right.
then I mean, it is a toxin. It used to be a pesticide.
Right.
And then because the farmers were inhaling so much of it, they couldn't use it anymore because everybody was getting sick. So while those things exist in this controlled transdermal delivery method for things like cognition and energy and all of what we're talking about here, I think there's definitely a space for it. I think the only concern is that if you're using a more addictive delivery method, then you will become addicted. And then, who's to say that you won't consume too much? But what do you guys think?
That's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, I think that the delivery method definitely does matter, and I think there's a physical addiction there, depending on the delivery method. Like the pouches, like people are used to then having them in their mouth. It becomes sort of a
Mm-hmm.
something that you have to like do, a habit. The patches, you're not doing anything; you're just feeling it. I do think it's very interesting the dose difference, though. Like you said, that's crazy. 11 versus like 1. I think that as with most things and substances, there's probably a curve, and then somewhere in there it's probably beneficial. and then it hits a point where it's neutral, and then it hits a point where it starts to be not beneficial because of the side effects, but I think depending on what they're trying to address with use of nicotine, it's a balancing of like the risks versus benefits. Some people on the long COVID groups talk about that they tried it, but they felt so sick the first couple of days they just couldn't get past it. So there, I think it's you have to balance: is it worth it to get through that sick part to see if you do feel better at the other side? Like I was so bad off that I was like, I don't care if I'm vomiting all day. I'm going to push through and do this for 2 weeks because I know that at that level, and given my health history, there's not really risk, otherwise. Then at least I can find out for sure whether this works for me. So.
Yeah,
Cool.
I like that it works for you part of it. I'm kind of one of those people that's like, Mother Nature is really, really smart. And there are a lot of plants and a lot of substances and a lot of medicinals on this planet that are going to work really great for some people and they're not going to work great for others. And it's also, how is it going to work in your human organism? Like, how is it actually going to metabolize? Where are you at in your life? What's going on? I think it makes a big difference. I think all those factors make a huge difference. But what keeps coming up for me actually is I love the idea of this patch. I think it's awesome. I think if it's right for you and you can wrap your brain around it and you are in a place. Long COVID is awful. I've had so many patients sit in front of me and they're like, I just, it's like nerve damage to their face, or they're like, I literally cannot come up with any creativity anymore. Like, it is life dampening. And, when you're willing to try anything and you're willing to like literally shake things up a little bit in order to make it better, I think this is an amazing option. And what's interesting is it brings me back a little bit to the woo woo, where I'm like, indigenous cultures have used tobacco for years in ceremonial settings, to connect in with their gods, to connect in with the spirits, to connect in with themselves. I recently had a roommate that lived with us that was going through a phase of using rape, which in the US is considered hape because, as you can imagine, the name is not awesome on paper.
Right.
So, so they call it hape. And I had a fabulous experience. She gave me a very small amount, but I mean, it is, rape is ground tobacco that's been blessed by the gods or by the shamans, not the gods. I'm sure shamans are, blessing with the gods as well. But it's mixed with some ash from the fire that they are blessing the tobacco with, and it's ground up, and you put a little bit like with this cool bone contraption, you like put it in your nose and they blow it and it just goes like, feels like it's going, and your brain is kind of exploding for a second. And you have a little bit of the autonomic response from the acetylcholine, like you literally start like getting a watery mouth and a watery nose, and then you have this like vasovagal response, and then you have this enormous amount of clarity, all things which acetylcholine are like absolutely meant to do. Those are like the three things that it does. Right. And so it's neat kind of thinking about how these substances have been used for so long that we end up second guessing them when we put ourselves in a Western medical framework. You're like, does there really have to be a study? Do you really have to? I mean, and yes, there does. For many, many things there does, because that's just the way that we are and we need that. But it is a basis. I think it comes down to what is going to work for that person. What, do they feel excited about maybe some of the side effects that could come from it? Like, what if I have, a bit of a spiritual awakening from going through this and opening up a different part of your brain? And I do think the administration with the patch is the best way to go for long COVID, because that container is very safe and there is a lot of research about it. Right. But I mean, I'm the type of person that would be like, well, when I do my cycles, I'm also going to throw in a little bit of rape and some high doses of C and a bunch of adaptogens. You know what I mean? Just to like let my body know, give it a very clear message that this is what I'm trying to accomplish.
I like that. Like telling your body, hey, this is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. The message has to be very clear. Like, you can't be doing that and having a glass of wine every night. You're like, that. Right. My body's like, what? Sorry, I'm done. I don't know what you're trying to tell me.
Are we supposed to be healthy and improving, or are we backtracking?
Yeah. It was great though. I only did it that one time. I didn't feel like I needed to do it more. I don't have that kind of addictive personality with that stuff though. So I feel like, and I do not like to put things up my nose. That's the first time I've put anything up my nose in a long. I've had so many concussions that I'm like, nope, I don't even like nasal sprays or anything like that. But I was like, okay, it was Christmas Eve and my kids were gone and my boyfriend was here and we were like, let's just get a little woo woo today. And we sat down and we all did it and we pulled tarot cards and just sat and relaxed. And it was wonderful. We all had really, really the clarity, I think, was the most amazing part of it. And with COVID, that was always the one thing in my clinical practice that I heard the most is they're like, my brain is foggy.
That's, it's funny that you say that too, because the one thing I have consistently tried to remind myself to be grateful for is that I, for whatever reason, did not get the brain fog that most people.
That's amazing.
So I had it horrifically with my implants. I mean, to the point where if I was thinking a thought and it was an important one, I needed to get to paper, with a pen immediately, because within seconds it would be gone and I couldn't find it anymore.
Oh my gosh.
It was awful. I was afraid constantly that I was going to forget to get my kids because I couldn't like register time. It was the most bizarre experience. And thankfully, like, even though I've been incredibly fatigued with long COVID, I did not have that brain fog that most people do. And I have just so much empathy for the people who are dealing with both, because then not only can they physically not do anything, they mentally can't do it. They're like useless. And I read a post this morning on one of the support groups, and this is not the first of its kind. And this is, to say how serious it is. They were like, we should start talking about assisted suicide. They're like, I'm not living a life worth living. It's some of these people, it's been 4 or 5 years at this point. And they're like, all I am is a burden to my family. This is how I'm existing. And I get it. Like, I had those, like, not necessarily like thoughts of going away, but like, oh my God, if this is my future, my kids, and I've never considered this, might have to go live with their dad. Like, this wouldn't be a life for them. And who would take care of me, or how would I do? Like, there were so many concerns and questions and stressors. And that's what a lot of people with long COVID are dealing with. I mean, it's just no way of living. Like, pretty much not moving, in the dark. You can't have stimulus. It's awful.
Yeah. So for those without an addictive personality, why the hell not? Just try a nicotine patch, see if it gets you out of the zone. Why not?
I know, it's amazing to me that there are people who haven't tried it, with all the people who have had success in the groups with it. But like I said, I'd say most people have tried it, and then they got that Herx reaction, and it was just bad enough that they didn't want to continue.
Yeah.
I think and I wonder if that reaction, go ahead.
Go ahead, Molly.
I wonder if that reaction is like a mild, like, nicotine poisoning. Not like poisoning, but like all of a sudden you're smoking 5 cigarettes and you've never smoked before. You know what I mean? Right. So I wonder if, like, not only is it kind of that die off, but it's also, which is similar to like if you took antibiotics for H. pylori or SIBO,
right,
or herbals. But I wonder, it's kind of a combination of the two too. Because as someone who was a social smoker after I quit, I know that it can be really nauseating.
Yeah. And I think there is a differentiation, like, between people knowing that they're having side effects from the nicotine, because most people will post specifically like, I couldn't even do it at this dose. I was throwing up. I had headaches. Versus people saying, I got 2 days in and started running fevers.
Yes.
Had body aches and like things that would be, more congruent with my immune system is ramping up to fight something off that it's recognizing.
Yeah. Or die off or detox or something.
Yeah.
It was like, reset. We've got to get all this crap out of here before we move into the next phase.
Right. Yeah.
So I have kind of a weird can of worms question for you, if this is okay. And you guys can you can be like, Lara, no, that's fine. But I'm curious if you noticed in any of the conversations and in forums and groups, if there was a correlation between people that had multiple vaccines or vaccines and not had vaccines and found success with the nicotine patch at all.
So I looked for this one specifically, both with the thought of, is long COVID more common with people who have had vaccines or no vaccine? And just to answer that kind of initial one from the data that I've seen online, and there's been some polls as well on the support groups, there doesn't seem to be a strong correlation between like the vaccine causing anything versus like no vaccine, versus people who've been vaccinated and then end up getting long COVID. There are people who, consider themselves vax injured on the sites. They didn't have COVID that they know of, and, got a vaccine and then shortly after developed, long COVID. and then there's people who didn't have the vaccine at all and still developed long COVID. I've had all of them because I'm on corticosteroids, so I always just went with getting the boosters and stuff. In fact, when I got COVID the second time, which was what led to this long COVID, I was actually about 4 or 5 months behind on a booster. So I kind of kicked myself because I was like, I wonder what would have happened had I gotten the booster before getting, long COVID or getting COVID a second time. But and then as far as the nicotine goes, so the nicotine group also has run like polls and surveys to see who has used the nicotine patches, was it successful, and were you vax injured, just long COVID or vaccinated, et cetera. And there doesn't seem to be. It seems like no matter what, if they do develop long COVID, it's the same mechanism to kind of get out if the nicotine patches do work.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I wonder if there's a threshold with that spike protein when you do get the COVID infection, if there's like a threshold where it's like, okay, you're going to have this for a long time unless we interrupt this physiology here.
Yeah.
In which case it sounds like nicotine has the possibility for a lot of humans to be able to jump in and do that, which is really cool.
Right. Exactly. I know it was funny too, because I saw my Kaiser doctor Friday, and she asked me how I was doing with everything, especially since I haven't gotten into the long COVID clinic. And I told her about everything, and she actually hadn't heard about the nicotine patches yet, which I was kind of surprised because at this point it's pretty well known. Even like I know doctors can't prescribe that, because it's off-label use. There are a lot of hoops to jump through to be able to, I think, do that. But I was surprised she didn't at least have heard about it,
It sounds so silly to me. I'm like, you can buy it at the grocery store.
I know, it's crazy.
You can take your professional opinion of how to administer it, just like
I know,
Tylenol,
exactly.
whatever.
Exactly. But, she hadn't heard of it, but she was definitely very interested in it. And she was like, I want to do some more looking into this to see, because I haven't heard about that. So hopefully, as word starts to get out, there will be more intentional research behind it so that, you don't have to go to a naturopath to have them tell you what the regular doctor could have told you.
Yeah. It'd be great if MDs could have it under their scope of practice and under their malpractice. So it's like not a big deal.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, that's the other unfortunate part. It's like you have all these people with long COVID who can't work, who are disabled, and then also can't get good care from their primary, and their insured providers. So they're having to go do, naturopathic doctors and chiropractors and, acupuncturists and all these things to pay out of pocket to find some sort of solution. And they don't have money. They're not working. They're disabled. Yeah. So it's like a really bad negative feedback loop.
Well, and that's why we would want, if it's possible to, not that research moves quickly at all, but if there was a way to make this, more mainstream so that other people understood, you obviously are very informed and have been digging in since, all of this began for you many years ago before the COVID. And I just feel like, gosh, if there was a way for this to be, more mainstream, then people would have an easier answer. And it really is just two sides of such a touchy coin. Like I have a client who won't do any supplements, which is totally fine. You don't need necessarily supplements, like for gut health stuff, but they won't even do protein powders because they're not FDA regulated. And on one hand, I'm like, I don't blame you. And on the other hand, I'm like,
right.
Okay.
Gosh,
that's your barometer. Because they haven't updated those. They haven't updated that law, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, since the 1900s, the early 1900s.
No, vitamins and supplements are regulated by the FDA.
Right. So it's just and for people who love science and for people who love health, and then for people in the integrative world, it's like, gosh, what do you do? How do you? So, thank goodness that there's so many things out there where people can turn. So if someone is struggling with this, Misha, what would you recommend that they do first?
That whenever I figured all this out and started the nicotine protocol, because I could only find a few select, whether it be blogs or posts describing what people experience, that was the reason I decided to share my experience day 1 through 14. And then, afterwards, so that people could look that information up and hopefully get a hit and find something that details like what I did, what I'm going through, and if it worked. And I think, when people ask me, oh, should I do this? I just say I would recommend you joining the support groups on Facebook if you have a Facebook, or make one just to join those support groups, and then check it out for yourself. Like the nicotine group, support group, because I want them to take in the information and make the decision for themselves. Personally, as I did, I would, if I were me, do the nicotine patches, because of all of the things that I've seen people actually have full success with. That has pretty much been, I think, the only thing. There are very few, cases or case studies that, someone did something else and that worked well, but the most widely effective thing was nicotine patches. So, I would recommend that someone join the support groups, do the research, and then make that decision for themselves. But having had it work for me, I think it's worth a shot, as long as there's no danger to some people who have long COVID have had really bad heart issues. And so I do worry that there might be either blood pressure or a heart rate concern, for certain people. So that would be something that they would need to discuss with their doctor.
So maybe use your insurance if you have it, go to your doctor, ask them to just kind of test the normal things for your heart, and then say, could I try, is anything bad going to happen to me if I were to try nicotine patches? Right.
Exactly. And just to see, because you want to make sure there's no dangerous interactions.
Mm-hmm.
People that, couldn't get through the nicotine because it got really scary was a heart related issue. So their heart rate was high even at a low dose. But that's the thing that people who have had long COVID the longest have developed the worst symptoms as far as heart rate dysregulation and things like that.
Yeah, low blood pressure, blood clotting, like that.
Yeah.
You don't want to go that route. That's high risk. And
it's actually interesting. This last week, I haven't felt well, and I've been trying to figure out, is this a flare up of the long COVID or what's going on? I actually looked at my heart rate information, and my resting heart rate had dropped by 10 beats per minute all week. And my blood pressure dropped to what would be a really healthy low blood pressure. But for me, that is not normal, at all. I'm normally, because of different medications I'm on, I'm normally 130 over 70 or 80. And it was 100 over 60. And
were you ovulating? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I am. So I have a couple days past ovulation, so it's right around the week. Right now, it's probably a week around the ovulation. So yes.
Does that lower your heart rate?
Well, estrogen can have real vasovagal effects, which is why you notice when it's decreasing that you end up having kind of erratic vasovagal stuff. So you could definitely experience high or low incidences around the time when your estrogen is tanking or at the highest.
Yeah.
Yeah. During ovulation, that's more FSH and LH kind of at the beginning of the cycle. And then more, it's pretty high around ovulation time. Yeah. They're, progesterone's pretty low and estrogen is pretty high at that time.
Interesting.
So, if you do have an imbalance of that and are showing signs of some sort of, orthostatic hypotension or something like that, you would want to look at whether, how to support your hormones in that way.
Gotcha. I've never had it happen before, but it could have played on it, or yeah.
And I don't think it's abnormal to feel lightheaded. Like you said, people get POTS with the nicotine. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I felt back in the day trying to smoke. So I was like, oh, again, I didn't even pass that.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, we're going to put the link to your TikTok in the show notes so that people can find you and they can watch your journey. And I'll link the specific kind of series that you did. And
yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's a playlist that's got it all in it on my channel. So it says long COVID, so that way they can just navigate straight to that if they don't want to watch all my other videos.
Which they do. Okay. Well, does anyone have anything else that they want to throw in here or add?
No, I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for covering a topic like this, because I think it's a much bigger problem than people think it is, and awareness is really important, especially for people who are so sick and feel so isolated. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Agreed. It's a bigger population than I think people realize. So thank you for sharing that and your intimate details of how it went for you, and being brave enough to bring such a cutting edge controversial thing to our podcast. Thank you. That's amazing. I'm stoked about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to be here and glad to help.
We nominate you to do a systematic review of all of the literature that you've seen, all of the anecdotal evidence on the internet.
I wish that I had an ounce of my grad school motivation left, and I would. But, oh my!
Where does it go?
It's gone. So gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, ladies, wonderful, wonderful spending time with you. Everyone at home or wherever you are listening, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Thank you so much for listening. We offer personalized support to clients in many ways and would love to work with you. Reach out to Lara at Lala's Wellness and Molly at Women's Gut Health for more information. Unlock your full health and hormone potential with Super Cute, Boom Bomb, and Best Tea. Check out the link in the show notes for more. See you next Saturday.